Welcome back to another episode of The Dirty Truth. Today's episode is going to be about a few things and how they're all tied together. 1, migration. 2, low birth rate in the United States as well as around the world. 3, the low workforce participation rate. What do all those three things have in common? We're going to talk about it. And what happens if things continue along the same path as they are today? I got a video here I want you to check out. I'm going to listen to about 1 minute and talk about it.
Unfortunately, we have this cultural issue where a lot of the baby boomers, which are one of the wealthiest generations ever, as they've passed down to the next generation, they said, I worked really hard in a factory, or I worked really hard early on, and then I was able to build a career, and I don't want that for my kids or my grandkids. And so there's this cultural stigma associated with those blue collar or mixed collar jobs. They say, well, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or some of these higher paid type of positions. And I would push back against that. But the reality is that we have a social media generation that has spent a lot of time on their phones. They've spent a lot of time in front of computers. So they're in front of screens. And this is not hard work. And they're not used to the rigor that's associated with whether it's construction or manufacturing or oil drilling or whatever it is out in the field. And so we have a generation that has not had to work hard, has not experienced the blisters and the calluses that come along with chopping wood all day. And so they don't want to go into that type of work. But it's actually good for your soul to do something.
Okay. That's the first part I want to show you about they're talking specifically about younger people not participating in the workforce. And I have another video that shows an actual chart of what the workforce or labor participation rate, what they're talking about, what it looks like over the last 15, 20 years. And what does all that mean?
Well, we just showed a graph of labor force participation rate, and we're going to bring that back up. That is from the St. Louis Fed. We have not yet recovered our labor force participation numbers from the pandemic. If you're looking at this arrow and that steep decline, that is the decline from February.
Okay, look where it used to be 20 years ago, right at about 67%. Today it's right around 62%. Of course, there was a big decline during the pandemic, but as you can see, nowhere near where it was 20 years ago.
February of 2020 until about May of 2020, and you can see the participation only goes back up. We're still 1% lower than we were before the pandemic, and that's about 1.5 million people. So, Ms. Crowfoot, my question.
So you can't look at the pandemic and say, oh, well, we had a pandemic. Look where it was headed before the pandemic.
Question for you is, when the economy gains 375,000 jobs, but we have 1.5 million people who've not yet re-entered the labor force, doesn't that obscure some of our economic numbers? Because those folks are not counted in the unemployment numbers.
Right. People who have left the labor force are not part of the unemployment rate. And this just goes to that broader concern about labor shortages in the economy right now. You're right. We have not gone back to our labor force participation rates of pre-COVID levels. And that just means that employers are going to still continue to have challenges in finding the talent that they need, even if we go into a mild recession, say, because of some of the monetary policy that we've been seeing. Because of demographics, right? We see an aging population. We see baby boomer retirements are accelerating. On top of the labor force not recovering to its levels that we saw before, this means the labor market's going to stay tight, even through a mild recession. And employers are going to continue to have to be creative in order.
Okay. She said a mouthful. Retiring, aging population, and retirement. Who's backfilling those retirees? I have another video here to show you or talk about that piece of it.
The rate of Americans giving birth slightly dropped last year as the nation continues to see fewer babies born than it did before the pandemic. According to the CDC, there were over 3.6 million children born in 2022. That's 3,000 fewer than the year before and 15% below the peak hit in 2007, which saw over 4.3 million births. But the data also highlights an ongoing shift.
So we're having less children in the United States, but it's just not in the United States. Every country on the planet is feeling the same change in society. So it's just not the United States. So let's make sure we understand that. We're not the only ones. Let's see if I can fast forward this. Teen pregnancy rate is down. People are having children later in life. So that has reversed. The trend has reversed. People used to have kids younger, and now they're having kids older.
If that trend continues, how?
So what happens if the trend continues? That's what I want to talk about.
What would the economic effects be?
Calamitous if you base everything on economics alone. Here's the upside in the United States. We have positive immigration right now. That means our country continues to grow.
We have positive migration. The United States plan to solve this problem is positive migration, meaning bringing people from other countries across our borders into this country. That's the United States plan to fight the low labor participation rate and low childbirth rate.
Be it at a slow pace. However, if you're on the other side of the planet, if you're in China, you're already starting to see population decline. In fact, China lost a population last year, reportedly, the size of San Francisco. That's a big chunk of people, 850,000 people to take out of the economy. Russia lost about 1.2 million. Japan lost about 750,000. It can't impact the economy directly if we follow the old rules. And the old rules are predicated on constant growth of the population. Well, guess what? That's not going to happen in the future.
And I got to ask you about a recent policy change, of course, the overturning of Roe versus Wade. How do you think?
Okay, we're not going to get into Roe versus Wade. But to bring you up to speed, we have a low labor participation rate. We have a low birth rate in the United States. And migration is the band-aid or fix to delay the inevitable. And what is the inevitable, which is what we ultimately want to get to. So I went to Chat GPT and I typed in a question: what happens when a society has more older people than younger people? Basically, this field is called aging population economics. And they spit out 1 through 5. Number 1, economic impact. With a larger elderly population, there typically increased pressure on the healthcare system, social security programs, and pension funds. This basically strains the government budgets and leads to debates about retirement age, taxation, and welfare policies. So there's no zero-sum game here. We can't continue on the path that we're doing and then nothing happens. If we have less people participating, some of us are getting older, we're aging out of the labor force. We have to have younger people to fill these jobs. And this talks about what's happening. We'll go down to number 2, labor force challenge is shrinking. A shrinking younger population can lead to labor shortages, especially in industries that require physical labor or specific skills. This can impact productivity and economic growth. And as you saw in one of the videos, our strength has always relied on constant growth. Well, the constant growth in the population is gone. The constant growth in labor participation is gone. Number 3, changes in consumption patterns. Older populations tend to have different consumption patterns. Older people aren't going to the nice new trendy restaurants. They're not going to movie theaters. They're not going to nightclubs. Everything that people under 30, under 35 do, older people don't do those things. So those industries will start to shrink or go away. Number 4, impact on family structures. With fewer younger people to support older family members, there may be an increased pressure on formal care systems or a reevaluation of traditional family caregiving roles. Number 5, the last one, older demographics. This is called political influence. That one's probably the least impactful. Short term, older demographics may have different political priorities and voting behaviors, leading to potential shifts in government policies and resource allocation. Overall, addressing the challenges posed by an aging population requires comprehensive policies and strategies to ensure sustainable economic growth, social stability, and the well-being of all age groups within society. Well, that was a lot. That's about 10, 11 minutes worth of information. Given all that information, what do you guys think? Migration is the answer. Based on the numbers, it seems that is the case. So when I hear people complaining about immigration, migration, and immigration and migration are two different things. You have to look at the definitions. But migration, it seems in the United States, for example, we need migration because we have an attractive economy. I don't know what these other countries are going to do. I have not looked at the migration rates for other countries. Given Russia's situation, I'm not seeing a whole bunch of people move or migrating to Russia. I don't think that's going to happen, given the political situation over there. But for the time being, we're relying on people that were born in other countries to make sure that society in the United States continues on the pathway that it's been on for the last 100 years or so. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is The Dirty Truth. I appreciate you for staying with me this long, if you have. And put something in the comments. If you want me to talk about a specific topic, let me know and I'll do it. But until then, see you next time. Like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate you guys.